Good evening from the Standard Group Center. Many thanks for joining us on this edition of Kivumbi 2017. Remember, we are keeping an eye on the presidential election rerun slated for the 17th of October, as was the date that was given by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And we continue with our election or pre-election analysis, counting down to that. And of course, the big story has been a story concerning the election date. And we have seen today the National Super Alliance opposing that election date that was set by the IEBC, saying they were not consulted. Let's begin right there with the NASA presidential candidate, Raila Odinga, leader of the National Super Alliance, speaking on the issue of the election date that was set by the electoral body on the 17th of October. That is in about 42 days' time. Let's listen in.
Walikataa kushauriana sisi. Mshauriana tu na Jubilee. Amechukua amri ya Bwana Matiang'i. Kwa sababu wakaweka hiyo tarehe ya 17.
We cannot have Matiang'i at 9 o'clock advising IBC on the date of election, and IBC same day in the evening stating to Kenyans their preferred date of election that they were told by Matiang'i. That is not possible. It is prudent that we do things right, and I'm asking honorably, Chebukati, put your house in order.
Another issue that has come to play is the issue of examinations by the Standard 8 and Form 4 students, that coming to play in terms of setting that election date. Let's listen to what Jubilee have had to say on this particular issue on the campaign trail.
Our competitors don't have to participate in those elections. In fact, there is no legal or constitutional requirement for everybody to participate in elections.
They want to create this confusion to the point that at the end of the day, it will not be possible to conduct election in this country. And then we will be in a constitutional crisis.
Right, that is what the two sides of the political divide have had to say about this. 42 days to that date that was set by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Our senior political affairs reporter, Chris Tairo, is following this story for us. Chris, good evening. What can you tell us about how this matter has been playing out in the political circles? Jubilee saying that NASA are doing this because they are not prepared for the election. NASA said they are not, or they were not, IBC did not consult them while addressing this. What are you hearing from political circles?
Well, a very good evening to you, Ben. And I can confirm that we are heading to very interesting political times ahead, even as we wait for the elections date, the fresh presidential elections date on the 17th. Remember that both Jubilee is pulling its side and NASA on the other side are pulling, and the person who is remaining at the middle is the referee, that is the IEBC. All eyes are on the IEBC. That's where the spotlight is, even as they continue to prepare for the 17th of October presidential fresh elections. And apart from what NASA has raised in regards to the elections date, indicating that they have not been consulted on the date, there's other issues that they are also raising. One of the issues, and we have seen IEBC just this evening have made some changes. There are some officials who have already been replaced, starting with the ICT head, that's Mohati, and now we have Albert Gogo, who is on an acting capacity, and that contract will only stay for 30 days. That is just to cater for the remaining days ahead of the fresh presidential elections. Apart from that, we also have another demand that NASA is raising is the printing firm. They're indicating that if they will be heading back to that presidential election, then Al Ghurair should not be allowed to print the ballot papers. But remember that there's a process here of a government institution trying to award a tender, and we know that it's very cumbersome in terms of advertising, vetting them, shortlisting them before finally awarding that company. And as you can see, we don't have that time. These will definitely need political goodwill from both sides. Remember that before the August 8th elections, we had such a committee that came together that was chaired by the former Meru Senator Kiretu Murungi and the current Siaya Senator, that is James Orengo, and they agreed on some pertinent issues and some electoral changes. And after that, we saw that the political temperatures, at least they came down. But this time around, we've seen that on the side of Jubilee, they are insisting that no changes in terms of any amendments. And if at all there will be any changes, the IBC will remain intact. But on the other side, we are seeing that NASA is saying they are not ready to go to an election, knowing that they have issues that they are yet to be tackled. For instance, about the servers, they are also saying that they should be allowed even before the elections to access the servers so that they can know what was really transpiring during that transmission of the results. So, Ben, we are heading to very interesting times, but what we expect is that peace will continue to prevail, Ben.
Chris, before I let you go, we have been hearing about that restructuring at the IEBC, but as is desired by law, we hadn't seen a memo from the electoral body concerning those said changes, supposed changes. Has that been made official by the IEBC? And then the other thing, is NASA looking, from what you've been able to hear, is NASA looking to have a very closely, politically, negotiated process, this process of making sure that they determine who is sitting on that IBC? And how difficult is that? Because IBC is a constitutional commission.
Well, Ben, a few minutes from now, we've just received a memo, and it's from the IEBC, and they've made some changes in terms of the officials. They've changed the operations manager. They've changed a number of officials in terms of the changes that they saw fit or they deemed fit that that those were some of the officials that had already been suspected to have maybe tampered or maybe officials that maybe have been compromised by either side. And one of them is the Muhati, who was heading the ICT department. We understand that now it will be held by Albert Gogo, but he will be under the strict supervision of the chairman himself, that is Chebukati. But we will be waiting to see to hear more from them. Remember that this is just a statement, but come tomorrow we will also be checking whether they'll be issuing media briefing so that they can make these matters straight. But going back to NASA, of course, some of these issues will need a bipartisan approach. Remember that if you want to change any electoral issue, any amendments to the law in terms of if you want to go back to the IEBC and ask them that they should not use the Al Ghurair, some of these issues really need to go back to Parliament. And remember that Parliament, as it stands, Jubilee enjoys majority of support, and maybe that's why Jubilee is confident that they will not allow any amendments to any electoral laws, or they will not allow IBC to be reconstituted. They would like it to go as it is. And so, Ben, as I said, some of these issues will really need political goodwill and, of course, a bipartisan approach where both members, that is from the Jubilee, and the members from NASA can agree to come on a round table and agree on some of these pertinent issues. But from where I stand, things are not really okay, or in terms of the talks, since each side really are holding on their hard stands up to now, Ben.
Thank you, Chris. Chris Tairo, Senior Political Affairs Reporter, joining us live from our City Center studio. He's keeping an eye on that story of the election dates and the impasse that has surrounded that from both sides of the political divide. Just a day after the IEBC announced that the presidential election rerun will be held on the 17th of October this year. That is exactly 42 days from today. In studio with me, to just put some of these issues into perspective, I am joined by political analyst Peter Amunga, Jubilee strategist Brian Mbogwa, and Joining us later on, from our City Center studio will be Hesbon Owila, political analyst as well. Three gentlemen in studio with me to just try and talk through some of these issues, the election date row, as well as the issue of the IBC, whether it should be the one to conduct the election or in what form. We shall be discussing that, shall be bringing in my guest after this quick commercial break. Don't go too far.